Well, can you feel it? Spring is in the air. It's coming. It's almost here. So that means it's time to put on a light jacket, go outside, get some sun on your face, and just breathe it in. Let's get rid of this winter slumber. And some people say the best way to do that is to go out golfing and hitting the links. A lot of people like to do that. Actually, before this second service, a guy came up to me because he was in the first service. He said, I got a great golfing joke for you. It'll fit perfectly with your sermon. I said, okay, what's the joke? And actually, it was really good. He said that Moses and Jesus went golfing, and a third guy said, hey, can I join your threesome? This old man came up and said, can I join your threesome? They said, sure. Moses went up to tee off. He teed off, and he sliced it. It went into the lake, and it was terrible, but he just parted the lake, got down, and chipped it up on the green. It was a nice shot. Jesus went up. When he did it, he sliced it too, but the ball stayed on top of the lake. He walked and chipped it up really close to the cup. The third guy got up. He too sliced it, but it went right into the lake. But what was strange is a fish grabbed that golf ball, spit it out. A bird caught it in the air, dropped it on the green, and a squirrel kicked it in the cup. Jesus looked at him and said, nice shot, Dad. All right. It was funnier when he said it, I think. A little funnier. But to be honest with you, I'm not much of a golfer. And if it's springtime and the sun's out, golf is actually one of the last things I like to do. And it's not because I'm not good at golf. Actually, I'm pretty good at it. I love the outdoors, but golf always makes me feel like I'm from the wrong side of the tracks. Like I'm an outsider. I feel like every time I go up to the tee and drive, somebody's behind me, they're snickering at my golf club, saying, where'd you get those? From Arnold Palmer or Gary Player? Or they're looking at my shoes thinking I got them from the Blue Light Special in Kmart. I always feel out of place. And this feeling started all the way back in the 7th grade. My dad worked really hard to get me into a private school. At this private school, people had money, a lot of money. My dad was just a hard worker, but most of the people who went to school had old kind of money. We grew up in a very rich suburb of Cleveland called Bay Village. One of my best friends was Billy Frayne. He was on my basketball team, and we hung out a lot together. One lazy Tuesday summer afternoon, he called me up and he said, hey, would you like to go golfing at my parents' country club? And they went to Avon Oaks Country Club. Very swanky country club. Their family belonged, they were members, and so Billy had free golfing anytime he wanted it. And he said, how would you like to go for free? I was kind of excited because I never dreamed I could walk on that golf course. Actually, my dad would take me to the local driving range or this really bad golf course called Bobo Links on Saturdays. It was terrible. Gophers would be all over the place. One of those bad golf courses. So I said, Billy, I'd love to come. I put my dad's clubs in the back trunk. My mom dropped me off at Billy's house. And right when I was pulling the clubs out, clinking these clubs, he said, wow, those are some antiques. Those are some old clubs. If you want, you can borrow my brother's set. I said, no, Billy, I'm used to these clubs. I can use them. And then he looked down at my shoes. I was wearing Converse All-Stars. Remember, though, back in the day, those cool shoes, Converse All-Stars. He goes, you don't have golf shoes? Said, I got an extra pair, Chris. You can borrow mine. And I felt bad, but Billy didn't make a big deal about it. When we got to Avon Oaks, Billy and I set our clubs outside the clubhouse. We went in to make a reservation for 9 holes. It was Tuesday morning. Not many people were signed up. And as we went outside to head to our clubs, the person behind the desk looked at me and he said, son, only collared shirts are allowed on our course. No t-shirts. Billy looked really kind of embarrassed for him, and he goes, Chris, don't worry about it. Pick up a shirt you like with a collar and put it on my dad's tab. He'll pay for it. Don't worry about it. Man, I felt terrible. I never knew all that was required to golf at Avon Oaks Country Club. When we went to the first tee, we were called right up, but as we were getting ready to make our initial drive, 2 golf carts pulled up with these old men kind of like this. 2 old duffers on each cart were looking at us like that. And they were looking me up and down, and I knew what they were thinking. Who is this peasant at Avon Oaks Country Club? I had just dumpy shorts on, and I just didn't look the part. Billy saw him come up, so while he's washing his golf balls, he jumped up to the tee, teed off, and he hit a really straight shot, but it was short, and they're grumbling about it, going, oh, like that. They were not impressed. I stepped up, pulled my dad's old wood driver out, placed my ball on the tee, took a giant swing, and I let it go, and I said, oh, please, please, don't let it slice. Don't let it slice. And I'm telling you, it was a miracle drive. It went soaring straight down the center, 50 yards farther than Billy's shot, but the old men just go, like that. We grabbed our clubs, hoofed the rest of the way, and I just remember those old guys' faces. Son, you do not belong here. I did not belong at Avon Oaks. Have you ever felt like that? You're an outsider, where you just don't belong, where the insiders make you feel like you're really not wanted. Sorry, you're not our type. When it comes to sports or school, or I'd even say local bowling clubs, being an outsider is not easy. It might only last for a couple hours, but it hurts. You know, it hurts when you're not included. But what if you feel like an outsider when it comes to knowing God? What if you feel like an outsider when you enter a church like ours? Some of you in here might even feel like an outsider. You don't belong here. What are you doing here? Well, that's who we're going to be speaking to today. Today we are asking this question, one question. Who really is an insider? We have been going through Romans. We are in this month of contrition where he's kind of pointing out that everybody has fallen short of the glory of God. And today we're going to talk about the insiders, the real insiders, those who, in a sense, have always been part of God's family. And to do that, I just want you to turn to Romans 2. We're going to look at the end of Romans 2 to chapter 3:2, but I just want to read a couple verses to begin. Starting in verse 17, the insiders. Now, Paul writes, if you call yourself a Jew, if you rely on the law and boast in God, if you know His will and approve of what is superior because you are instructed by the law, if you are convinced that you are a guide for the blind, a light for those who are in the dark, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of little children because you have in the law the embodiment of knowledge and truth, you then who teach others, do you not teach yourself? You who preach against stealing, do you steal? You who say that people should not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who boast in the law, do you dishonor God by breaking the law? As it is written, God's name is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. The insider. That's what he's talking about. So we are coming to the month of March's conclusion. We've been talking about these three targets of wrath for the last 3 weeks. Meaning, what Paul is trying to do is he's trying to say there's three groups of people that God's targeting for wrath. One group, which we talked about 3 weeks ago, is just basically mankind in general. That all of us have been given the truth of God, but we subvert it, we push it down, and we kind of ignore Him. And because of that, we're worthy of death. Last 2 weeks, we talked about this group that are the good. They're the people that think, why would God punish me? I'm a good person. 2 weeks ago, we said the good people can be in two categories. One, I'm not as bad as them. And since I'm not as bad as them, God is going to favor me. It's the old Adolf Hitler thing, you know. Well, at least I'm not as bad as Hitler. I should get in. And he said, if you are judging people and you do the same thing, you're guilty. Last week we talked about the group that think they're good because they do good. And he said, if you are going to try to do good to make it into heaven, you got to be perfect. Can you do that? And if you're not, you deserve wrath. Well, today we're going to talk about the third group, and the third group are the Jews, the insiders, the group that really thinks, hey, I'm in. I am in. Paul describes them, if you look at chapter 3, like this. He says, what advantage then is there in being a Jew? Or what value is there in circumcision? Much in every way. First of all, the Jews have been entrusted with the very words of God. So what he's saying is, in a way, they have a reason for feeling like insiders because they are, and they've been designed to be the chosen people, the guardians of God's revelation. Through the Jews, He has been, to a degree, showing off to the world through their people. Romans 9:4 says, the people of Israel, theirs is the adoption to sonship, meaning they are God's children. Theirs is the divine glory. When they would set up the tabernacle, the glory of God would actually appear at the nation Israel's tabernacle. The covenants, the receiving of the law, that's when Moses came down out of the mountain. Temple worship and the promises, they had the sacrifices. Theirs are the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses. And from them is traced the human ancestry of the Messiah. The king comes out of the root of Jesse, which is from the tribe of Judah. And so you could say they're advantaged. They're insiders. They are the chosen people. People would say they are the depository of truth in the historical witness of God. If you notice, Israel is located in Europe, Asia, and Africa, and they're right in the middle. They're God's billboard to the world. He says, look at my people, and you'll see how I act. But what is a Jew? What is a Jew? Well, a Jew is it's an ethnic group. It's people who actually can trace things back to the region occupied by the people in Judah. That's where you get Jew, people from Judah. Judah carried the lineage of the king. They are the true blue bloods. So ethnically, you could say they're the blue bloods. They are also a nation that is known by God through covenants. Genesis 12, 1 through 3, God told Abraham, you're going to have so many kids, it's going to be more than the sands of the seashore. And by them, I'm going to bless the world. Those who bless Israel, I will bless. Those who curse Israel, I will curse. So they're a nation. A Jew is also a religious person, a person that you could say they're the elite worshiping community that adheres to the laws and principles of the Old Testament, of the Torah. They are, God often said, my precious possession by divine right. Even Hosea says it like this, chapter 11. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. The more they were called, the more they went away from me. It was I who taught Ephraim to walk, taking them by the arms, but they did not realize it was I who healed them. I led them with cords of human kindness, with ties of love. To them, I was like one who lifts a little child to the cheek. I bent down to feed them. How can I give you up, Ephraim? How can I hand you over, Israel? My heart is changed within me. All my compassion is aroused. They will follow the Lord. He will roar like a lion. When he roars, his children will come back home from the west. So clearly, he has a special place for the Jews. They are insiders. You could say like Billy and his family were to Avon Oaks, the Jews were Jehovah God's property. But now Paul is going to address them in chapter 2, but he's not necessarily going to compliment them. In fact, he's going to say something very shocking. Here's going to be his point. Just because you think you have all the criteria to be an insider, it doesn't necessarily make you an insider. Having all the criteria of an insider doesn't necessarily make you an insider. Or you could even take it a step further. You need to be careful that your religion isn't blinding you to the wrath of God that may be pointed at you. And somebody say, wait a minute. How can a person's religion blind someone to God's anger? Isn't religion a sign that I'm actually part of an elite group, and we're going to talk about that and dig deeper, because in the same way that the Jews were taking their insider group for granted, so do we sometimes take our Christianity for granted. Some of us are religious, and because we're religious, we think we're in. So we're going to talk about the religious insiders. Assuming you're an insider may be one of the biggest hindrances to really being an actual insider. I'll say that again. Assuming you are an insider may be one of the biggest hindrances to you really actually being an insider. It might be the worst thing for you. You're assuming you're his. I think even some of us who are raised in the church could be falling prey to the same problems that the Jews were. I call this the second and sometimes third generation fallacy or curse. Mom and dad's faith is passed to me. No, it's not. No, it's not. But often we assume it is, and usually the people who view themselves as insiders are banking on three things that the Jews did. Number one is the Jews believed they were chosen. That's why in verse 1 it says, or 17, you're boasting in God. Like you are proud that you think you are God's. And they believed that they were chosen, and because they were chosen, they were automatically in, regardless of how they behaved. Hey, I'm a Jew, I was always a Jew, and I will forever be a Jew. I wonder, do you think there are people who claim to be Christian because they were raised in a Christian church, but they don't live like it? Do you think there are some people who live like the non-Christian around them, but they still think they're Christian because their mom and dad are? And is claiming Christ enough? Second thing, the Jews at that time thought their system of laws, traditions, priesthoods, practices was the right system. That's why he writes in here, if you rely on the law, verse 18, if you know His will and approve of what is superior because you're instructed by the law, see, they are leaning on their system. Their system is giving them false confidence. You know, you can hear a Jew saying, well, my family practiced Passover, they ate kosher food, I wear a yarmulke, I rest on the Sabbath, therefore I must be loved by God. You can also hear Christians leaning on their tradition, often in their family heritage. It's going to church on Sunday, midnight service on Christmas Eve, is wearing a fancy dress on Easter, is being raised in a Christian school as an elementary school kid. Is that enough? Is that enough? And then the third false confidence is there's outward signs that prove that I'm in. It's like there's outward stamps of approval. The Jews assumed they were in because look at verse 25. Circumcision. They were circumcised. They believed God's approval was on them because they're circumcised. It's proof, it's a stamp, you're in. For the Christian, it's often infant baptism, sometimes adult baptism, sometimes, and somebody got mad at me after first service, altar calls, sometimes tongues. Those are stamps of approval. I call these the assumed lowest common denominator of salvation. What do I mean? If you go to a funeral often, if people aren't sure if that person's going to heaven, they will resort to the lowest common denominator. Oh, but they were baptized as infants, so they're in. I saw them go forward at an altar call. I heard them use tongues in a prayer language. Does that really mean somebody's saved? Paul is saying that none of this matters, really. Like it really doesn't matter if you are not actually living like a child of God. In fact, according to verse 24, it's dangerous to profess Him as God, but not possess Him as God. Look at verse 24. As it is written, he's talking to these Jews who claim their Judaism, but they aren't living like true Jews. As it is written, God's name is being blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you, because of your hypocrisy. You are dragging his name through the mud. This just happened to me last week, as a matter of fact. It's a good example of what happened. On Friday, the owners of Speedway barged into my office with cops to arrest me for stealing 4 Snicker bars, 2 bags of Doritos, 3 5-hour energy drinks, a Dr. Pepper, 2 hot dogs with sauerkraut, and a Snow White keyring without paying. I said, why are you arresting me? And they said they caught me on camera. It was a man with a long camel-colored coat, and I'm the only one in town who has that coat. And I said, I do have that coat, but I demand to see the footage. So they showed me the footage, and sure enough, whoever was stealing was wearing my coat. So I asked them to zoom in. And as they zoomed in, it was Will Snyder who was wearing my coat. I'm surprised they let him out to do announcements. He's got to go back to the clink later. But you're probably saying, what is wrong with you, Chris? I said, but I know I'm kidding, but did you know there are a lot of people wearing Jesus' coat, doing things, saying things, acting in ways that Jesus himself would never do? And because of this, he and his followers get blame for a lot of spiritual posing that's going around. I'm a Christian. My mom and dad have been Christians, but I get drunk like everybody else. But I'm a Christian. If you're not going to act like him, stop wearing his coat. That's what he's talking about here. And now it's going to get really dangerous. I was talking to Peone. He goes, all right, go ahead. It's on you. That's what he said. It's my A slide. Time for A slide. It's a very personal A slide. And I'm nervous about my A slide because I do not want to offend, but I have to discuss because I understand what he's talking about very, very well. Because I lived this life for a long time. My objective in my A slide is to show you how someone who's been raised to believe that they are in the in group because of a set of criteria does not prove a thing. Doesn't prove a thing. And in fact, could actually blind you from having a real relationship with the living God. It was the summer after my senior year. I had a discussion with my best friend, John LeMay. We were sitting on the beach by Lake Erie. And I remember this because, number one, guys who are seniors don't talk about this stuff too often. And number two, I just remember it. He was from an independent Baptist church. And I was a 4th, maybe 5th, 6th, 7th generation Roman Catholic. All I can tell you is Roman Catholicism's in my blood. I'm a German, Polish Catholic. So we started talking about religion and faith. It's really weird. I asked him, I said, what do Baptists do on Sunday, and why do you think your church is right? Because we're both Christians, but clearly we both disagree. And he said, well, here's what he said. I'm not much of a Baptist. What we do at our church is we sing some old songs. My mom plays the organ. We hear the Bible being read, and then some preacher gets up and preaches for a long time, about an hour. He said, honestly, it's kind of boring. And then we go home. He then asked me, he goes, well, okay, you're Roman Catholic. Why do you think you guys are right? Why do you guys think you're right? And here's what I said. It's kind of arrogant, but I said this. I said, because we have it all. He goes, what do you mean you got it all? I said, well, we got the Pope. At the time, it was Pope John Paul II. And Pope John Paul II is kind of like a hero. He was actually an actor from Poland, but he knew how to play the part of a pope. He got this cross that was kind of curved, and he was always leaning on it, and he always looked in pain. He was a perfect pope. He was a perfect pope. I love the guy. We had St. Peter's Basilica, Notre Dame in France, Notre Dame football team. Do you know what Notre Dame means? Our Lady in French. We had the Sistine Chapel, Vatican, St. Patrick's in New York. We had a conclave of cardinals. I mean, that looks holy. It's impressive. We had the priesthood, specifically the Eucharist. Jesus' body is actually in that wafer. It's called transubstantiation. We have that. We have infant baptism with God. I was my niece's godfather. My niece named Kayla, they asked me to be the godfather. That's why I kind of talk like this every once in a while, I could have been a contender, I'm going to fit you with some cement shoe. It's the godfather. And we got all this, but we also have Mary. We got it all. We got it all. The problem is, at the same time I said this, both John and I loved to drink and get drunk, and we were ready to go to the social scene in our colleges and respective rotten, reprehensible fraternities. But none of that mattered because I was in. I'm in. I was telling Chris that I was going to preach this, and he said, ooh, it's dangerous because people will always defend the system they grew up in because they still have relatives and friends in that system, and they cling to that system, and many will never leave that system because they bank so much on that system. And I'm thinking, but why do we hang on to systems? Why do we do this? What is it about a system and a tradition that makes us so confident and so loyal? And some of you might say, okay, Chris, if it's not a system, what is it then? If it's not traditions, if it's not family you grow up in, what do we hang on tight to? What is the marker that I'm in? You could ask it like this. What matters most to God? Paul's very clear. Look at verse 28. We can actually start in verse 27. Verse 27 says, the one who is not circumcised physically and yet obeys the law, it's talking to the Jew who is circumcised physically, that does not obey the law. And Paul says, well, the one who is not circumcised physically and yet obeys the law will condemn you, who even though you have the written code, you got it all, you're still a lawbreaker. And then verse 28, a person is not a Jew who is one only outwardly. A person is not a Christian who is one only outwardly. Nor is circumcision, infant baptism, altar calls, merely outward and physical. No, a person is a Jew, a person is a Christian, a person is a true believer who is one inwardly. And circumcision is the circumcision of the heart by the Spirit of God, not by the written code. Such a person's praise is not from other people. And what he's hinting at is a lot of these things we do with regards to our traditions, how we dress. We do it so other people will be impressed. But really, let's try to just get our praise from God. There's a great story. Jesus met this Samaritan woman. And if you know, Judah was the southern part of Israel. Samaria was north of Israel, but Samaria was full of half-breeds, half Jews, half pagans. And they were really looked down on by full Jews, the Judeans. So Jesus is at a well in Samaria. And the Samaritan woman comes up to him and she says to him, "You're a Jew, and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" Number one, what are you even talking to me for? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Why? Because they're insiders. Jews are insiders. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would give you living water. Everyone who drinks this water from the well, they'll be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst again. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them, a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to Jesus, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. I can see you're a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem." "Woman," Jesus replied, "believe me, A time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the spirit and in truth. It's clear. Jesus no longer insists that you become a Jew, and for that matter, a Baptist, or a Catholic, or a Christian Reformed, or a Lutheran, or even a KCBC person of faith. Jesus is looking for people who want to worship God in the Spirit by living in the truth. That's what he wants. He doesn't want people banking on traditions, the right nationality, not the superior family name, not even accepted set of doctrines. Ooh. All that matters to God is having an actual relationship with him through faith in the Son of God. That's it. And that's everything. That is the Insiders Group. And God offers you actually a VIP ticket. Go to the book of John. It's like a backstage pass or a pass into heaven. And it's found in John 1, 11 through 13. Watch how clear this is. It's one of my favorite verses because it is so clear. John chapter 1, verse 11. Verse 11, he means Jesus came to that which was his own. So he came to the Jews. Jesus' first time, he came to that which was his own. But his own, they didn't receive him. They actually put him on a cross. They didn't receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, what does it mean to receive him? Well, to those who believed on his name, to those who believed that Jesus actually came to this earth, died on a cross, was buried, and rose again, and believes he's God. Those who believe on his name, he gave the right. That means the authority and power. He gave the VIP ticket to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent. That means it doesn't matter what family you're from, nor of human decision. It does not matter if you get baptized, nor of a husband's will. Doesn't matter what religion you are, but you're born of God. Faith is worshiping him in spirit and in truth. So after I went golfing with Billy, we not only had a great time, but I beat him. I beat a member of Avon Oaks Country Club. I beat him. I couldn't believe it. I beat him. I asked Billy if he ever went golfing with any of our other friends from school. He said, yeah, there's 2 other guys from our school that belong to the same country club. Then he said, but they're really obnoxious and they're terrible golfers. I said, yeah, but they belong to the club. And then he looked at me and he said this, who cares? And by the way, do you want to go golfing again next Tuesday? Billy wanted me around. So does a guy named Jesus. He wanted me. He wants you by faith. To all who receive him, to them he gives the right to be called the children of God. The Insiders Group. The Insiders Group. What say you?